So we are live. Guys, thanks again for checking in. Today is a really special day for me. I know I said it every time, but today I also mean it again because today I'm joined by AJ, aka AJ Morris. He also has a YouTube channel. I will put the channel down below. And AJ is a special guest for me because he's all about natural bodybuilding. Like what he does is basically he goes on stage. He's shredded to the bone. He's like at around 5 or 6% body fat, and he basically needs to put his body through extreme things to basically reach that level. So I want to have him on here because me personally as well, I'm a big fan of natural bodybuilding. I also personally go through like bulking and cutting phases because I just love the process of changing your body composition. And AJ is a guy that puts himself through such extreme things and needs to go to such extreme places in terms of nutrition, in terms of his training, that I was like, you guys need to hear from him. And if you like his stuff, you definitely need to go over to his channel and check his stuff out. So today I'm here with AJ. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm really looking forward to this episode.
It's a pleasure, man. Thank you very much for having me on, and that is a very, very kind introduction. I think you wrapped up pretty much what I do and what I'm about in a really good way there. And yeah, I appreciate you wanting to put myself out in front of your audience because, you know, I know as a guy that hosts a podcast as well, I know that I'm very selective with who I want to come on and whether they match what I want to put out and whether my listeners will benefit from them. So the fact that you've reached out to me and think that I'm gonna impact your listeners in a positive way is really quite cool, and I really appreciate that, matey. So yeah, I'm ready for the questions. I'm ready to give you guys some stuff, and yeah, let's crack into things.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. So my first question is, what's your story? How did you get into natural bodybuilding in the first place?
Sure. So when I was young, I was always competitive, and I really didn't like team sports whatsoever. So I was competitive. The first thing I did that was competitive was football from a very, very young age. And I like I said, I didn't really enjoy that because of the team aspect. Like I just get very frustrated when people wouldn't do what they were supposed to do. One of my pet hates was like playing games like rounders where people would just do nothing in school, and I just get extremely frustrated because I was putting my effort in and our team would lose out of someone else's lack of effort comparative to what I was putting in. So then at the age of 8, I started racing karts competitively. So from the age of 8 all the way until 16, I was very heavily involved in motorsport, and I was actually on an academy which was the same academy. There was about 10 to 11 athletes or drivers, and 3 of them now in that academy are all in F1, like literally in F1. They're in seats because this year has featured 3 people going up to F1 that are British, and they were all in that academy. And it was a very selective academy, and my dad was very pushy to try and get me into it, and it worked. It worked. You know, I was essentially just a young guy with a lot of passion, and there was a lot of interview processes, and it was very much like putting me in the deep end of what it was like to be an athlete at that stage. And I realized, being surrounded by some of the guys that were in that academy, that I had one thing that was going to make me do really well in sport, which was potentially a lot of work ethic comparative to some people, and determination and a will to do everything that I could do to be the best. But I realized that I had one thing that was extremely lacking comparative to a lot of those guys, and I didn't have the dad that worked in the top of a bank, or the dad that, you know, had a lot of money to spend on something. You know, we were already spending a lot of money racing at even a very what would be deemed as an amateur level, so the monetary value was super duper high, and to move up to the next stage was going to take a lot of money. And so I basically stopped racing karts at the age of 16. I said to my dad one weekend, I was like, I don't want you to spend any more money on this. And it was quite upsetting, that, because I wanted to do well. I wanted to have a career in motorsport, and you know, I thought about going down the route of maybe being involved in motorsport but not racing, and like being within a team environment, or being like someone that was managing an athlete's fitness, for example, being a coach. And it could have gone down that route, to be honest, but I'm glad it didn't, because I would not have had what I have now. It still would have been good, but it wouldn't have been what it is today. And so I just thought, okay, cool, like let's find something else where I can put all of my effort into it and not be determined by money, not be determined by someone else's effort, be just determined by me, what I put forwards and how I put effort into things. So that's how I found bodybuilding. And I was already very heavily involved in fitness through the motorsport, and all of the fitness things that we had to do with relevance to that. And a lot of that was weight training based as well. So I'd already been in the gym since 15. So when I was 16, 17, 18, started taking it a lot more seriously, started working towards my first competition with the help of a coach. I had a coach for my first ever season in 2014, and I did a few teenage bodybuilding shows at that stage. And that coach was great in the sense that he just taught me what I needed to know from a ground basis of like what was exercise frequency, what was exercise selection, what was adequate volume, what was tracking macronutrients. And that coach was what I needed. And I think it's actually what a lot of other young athletes need at the start of their journey. They need someone to just basically coach them through a process. And, whilst you can nowadays, back when I was like, got initially into it, we didn't have a lot of podcasts. We had a few. We don't have anywhere near the amount that we have now. Like now you have so many plotting up all over the place that are putting out great information, and whose you choose to listen to is up to you. But I'd say just absorb as much as you can, but ideally get you someone to get you through a process with accountability. And that's what helped me in that first initial phase. So I competed. I did okay. I didn't do anything special as a teenager in that first year. Then I just competed the next year after it because I was hooked, and I did a lot better. I won some shows as a teenager, and that's what really sort of sparked the fire, so to speak, to continue competing as a bodybuilder and chase more muscle and improve and be better. And I took a year off. I got into coaching. I started as a PT. I had a lot of PT clients. I was doing the 5 a.m. starts, the 11 p.m. finishes, and I did that for the best part of a year and a half, combined with growing my online business. As you'll know about, Charles, you came to the seminar, and so I built to the point where I got basically like 30 regular online clients that was coming in every single month. It wouldn't really dip below 30, wouldn't really go much above. It would just hover. So I was like, cool, I'm stable. Left the PT job in that year, and then basically went full-time coaching in that year. And at the end of 2015 was when I went full-time coaching, and then all of 2016 off-season full-time coaching online, and built what Team MBM is now, which was just took one thing that I think people don't realize is how much time and effort it took me to have what I have now. A lot of coaches that are getting into it nowadays that expect what their coaching business is to be like mine in a very short window of time. Like, what you got to realize is, like, it's 2019 now, and I started working on this relentlessly since 2014, and that's why I'm here now, like with the client base that I've got, with the demand that I've got, because I've just been non-stop since 2014. And that is another cliff note, like non-stop, because I don't there's not a day where I haven't posted something content wise since 2014. And when you do that, you will get somewhere very, very, very quick in relative terms. So in relative terms, taking a business from basically nothing to pretty successful in that period of time is pretty damn good, considering what most fitness businesses especially fail within some of the first years of being, in the scene. So, that's good, but you have to put in the work. So from a business perspective, that's how I've grown. And then obviously, most recently, competitive wise, 2017 was really good for me. That was when I realized that I definitely want to achieve big things as a bodybuilder, being that, I have the ability to win world titles and British titles. I say that I never imagined that I could do that, but I really did. In my head, I knew that I could do that. It was still very much a whirlwind of emotion when I did achieve both those things, because it's hard to believe that you're going to be able to do that. But you have to have something inside of you telling you that you can do it. So I just told myself repeatedly that I was going to do it. And then, you know, eventually it kind of did happen, because I knew that I'd just work relentlessly as well. Like that's I think one of my talents is just my ability to work. I think it's going to be hard to find someone that would want to work as hard as I would. And sometimes that is maybe to my detriment in some circumstances.
Yeah.
And I will touch on that at some point in the podcast, I'm sure. But you know, I think having an innate ability to just do everything you can possibly do to achieve a goal is absolutely pivotal when it comes to bodybuilding. But yeah, mate, you know, long story short, that's pretty much me. That's what I do, and how I've done it. And yeah, let's get into some questions.
Yeah, man, you mentioned your work ethic, and that's also a reason why I want to have you here, because just by watching your videos on your channel, I was really able to tell that you are this hardworking guy, dude. Like it came like through the camera to the lens into me, you know what I mean?
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, I want to rub off, man. Like if that rubs off in what I do, then that's perfect.
Yeah, especially the passion for it. Yeah, because I mean, at your level, you need to have everything checked.
Sure. Yeah, you do. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Yes. So yeah, let's go into the questions, man. Like nutrition wise, I know that you need to go through like off-season phases and contest prep phases. And for me personally, I will not compete next year, and like in 2 years, probably have a photo shoot or something. But I still am able to learn a lot from you guys in terms of these phases, because I'm also going through an off-season phase, quote unquote, right now. And I see that most young guys, they don't really do that, even though perhaps they want to look good for the beach, or they just want to build the most amount of muscle in the shortest amount of time possible. But they never really think about that a proper off-season phase. So it would be cool if you could talk about your approach and give some advice to these young guys out there.
Sure. So I think these cyclical phases of pushing up in body weight and coming down are absolutely very, very much a part of what bodybuilders do. Now, the thing that I think that maybe people get caught up upon, or maybe a little bit confused on, is how frequently these things need to happen and the goal within these specific phases. So what we've got to remember is that the reason why we're going up and then coming down is purely for the rationale of building maximal muscle mass. Now, what a lot of people do is get uncomfortable in the push-up portion of the phases because they might not like the way that they look. They might see little things happen, like their face is getting fatter. They don't like that appearance. They don't like the cosmetic look. Now, then they diet purely based on a cosmetic rationale. So this is no longer a muscularity-based rationale. It's cosmetic. And that's not what we want to really achieve in these phases. Of course, we're going to clean up cosmetically. We're going to look better. But that's not really what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to only do these phases when we need to, from a pure standpoint of gaining more muscle. So maybe some of our basic feedback has got out of way. You know, our recovery capacity is going down. Maybe we're starting to see, you know, our ability to handle volume is decreasing because our general fitness is low. Maybe we're starting to see a preference, or sorry, a slight shift in our ability to gain lean muscle versus body fat, because obviously there is some form of shifts in nutrient partitioning as we get in certain levels of body fat as well. So with all these things considered, what do we do to track this point at which we then need to diet? Well, the one thing that I think people lack as well is their analysis of their own physique when they don't have a coach. So something that a lot of people don't do is take regular progress photos. And they just assume that when they get to a certain body weight, they then need to cut. And for a general population client, they might find that beneficial. You know, might have, say that's, you know, 70 kgs is their holiday weight. So they know that if they're, you know, 75 kgs, they've got to diet down to 70 kgs to look at good on their holiday. For a bodybuilder, the goal is not to be within weight goals. Like, I don't really set weight goals or parameters for my clients. I take them up at a steady rate. So for example, for a male, it could be anywhere between 0.3, 0.5 pounds per week of body weight gain. I think that's a nice rate of gain that's not too assertive, but assertive enough to ensure they're in a surplus.
Yeah.
You mentioned it as well. People don't ensure they're in a surplus. They do 6 months of hard training, they've gained 2 pounds. And like, what's that done? Have they really maximized tissue accrual in that phase? Probably not. So being really accountable to not only progress photos on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis, perhaps in an off-season phase, but also tracking your body weight as a moving average and understanding where it's going. Are you going up enough? Are you potentially needing to slow down the rate? That's really, really important too. And then ultimately, you'll get to a point, you'll get to a point where you see it becoming unfavorable to gain any more body weight. And that's the point where you will need to do what's called a mini diet, a recomp, a cleanup. There's so many ways to determine what this phase is. But essentially, if the goal remains to gain more tissue, that phase needs to be very short and quick and efficient. And that's why we get in and get out with that phase. Yeah. Because are we building muscle in a deficit? No. And if the goal is building more muscle, spending more than the required time in that deficit period is just taking away from the end goal. So for me, the next time I need to clean up, it will be an efficient get in, get out, like a bank robbery. I think Steve used that analogy before. Get out and, come away with the goods, which is a new clean slate to push up and gain more tissue. And then you're out with the goods, you're away and you're back to gaining muscle again. And at that point, like I said, setting up an aggressive diet is very important that you understand the psychological implications of doing so. So if someone's coming out of a contest prep and they gain weight really, really fast and they're like, oh my God, I've gained weight too fast, I need to mini diet. Worst time to mini diet ever is doing that. Any time that you come from a very lean body composition, food focus is high, you gain very, very quickly and you mini diet. Basically, that's the start of you developing some form of eating disorder with that kind of approach. Being very serious, you will start to develop eating disorder like tendencies if you continue to do this very cyclical, short phases of really gaining too much body weight and then cutting back very aggressively. The aggressive diet is only for people that can handle it. And there's a certain degree of person that can handle an aggressive diet. It's someone that's been in a surplus for a nice amount of time. Food focus is low. They're probably very satiated. From a hormonal perspective, if they were to take bloods, things are probably in a good spot, i.e. for a female, they've got their menstrual cycle in a good position. They've got regular periods. For a male, they've got, good, decent sex drive. They've got, for example, they're feeling nice level energy throughout the day. They're not having any huge drop-offs or fatigue or lethargy or anything like that, besides the fatigue that will come with being at high body weight, which is obviously understandable. A lot of people complain when they do push up that they feel more fatigued and tired, and that they actually feel better when they're dieting. And that's true. And that's unfortunately what bodybuilding is like, is that these phases, like you said at the start of the podcast, are very extreme. Pushing up in body weight to phases where volume is high, intensity is high, you're lifting loads that are very systemically taxing, you're going to feel tired. You're going to feel fatigued. It's like, how are you not going to feel fatigued? Because you're forcing, again, your body to do something it doesn't really want to do. Does your body want more muscle? Not really. Like, you're forcing a novel adaptation. So you have to feel somewhat tired to be able to do that. That's like when dieting down, you will feel tired because, again, you're taking your body to a place where it doesn't want to be. It's beyond its level of deemed as homeostasis, So yes, anyway, you'll diet down from a good start point. You'll get however many pounds that you need to get off to get to that relatively lean start point. And then you'll go up again. And what I've seen for competitors, females, that might result in getting anywhere between 10 and 15 pounds above their stage weight to have a fresh start to then gain again. For males, it could be literally anywhere between 20 and 25 pounds above their stage weight to be relatively lean. That might sound shocking, 20 to 25 pounds above stage weight and be relatively lean, but it's true. Like, if I took my body weight now down from where I'm at, I'd probably mini diet to around 20 to 25 pounds above stage, and I'd be pretty lean at that body weight, because 20 pounds or maybe 15 pounds off that, and I'd be very close to contest ready, and that's disgustingly shredded. That's not what you need to do with a mini diet. The mini diet is to get you into a much better grounds for gaining more muscle tissue. I've said so. yes, like these phases are what bodybuilding is all about. For younger athletes, I'm a big fan of doing these as infrequently as possible, because obviously when you're younger, your propensity to build lean tissue is that much greater anyway, due to the hormonal environment that you're in and the fact that your training age is lower. For more experienced athletes, for those that are 25 and beyond, that have multiple years of training experience, perhaps up to 10 years of training experience, doing the big old push-ups, I'm not a huge fan of, because I just don't think that they'll yield the same kind of positives that the push-up for a young guy would result in. I think actually some negatives will come with that, especially in terms of partitioning ratios and just the awkwardness of having to diet down from a much higher set point as an older athlete. So I actually coach 2 masters competitors, a masters figure, a masters bodybuilder, and I've kept them a lot leaner than I've kept all of my juniors. That's for sure, because I know that just pushing them up is just not going to yield much more gains than keeping them slightly leaner and having a much slower rate of gain, because it's just a propensity to build tissue is that much less. But yeah, that's some of my thoughts on these phases.
Yeah, very good points. Like talking about Steve before, this year is also the first year I'm getting coached by our man Steve from Revive Stronger. And one of the biggest reasons I'm getting coached by him, or why I got a coach, is also to stay committed to this gaining phase, because I'm the worst guy for that. Like as soon as I see a little bit of body fat also in my face, I'm like, oh dude, I'm doing it wrong. And then I kind of try to do more steps during my day, And Steve also told me, dude, sorry, what?
I hate it too. I hate the cosmetic look that I get when I push up, but
Yeah.
it's part. Although I see it, it's just part and parcel of it.
Yeah.
If I had a choice, on like gaining muscle without having all of these things, of course I'd take the choice of looking the same as I do when I diet down and still gaining lean tissue, but it just doesn't happen that way. And you've got to view like I said, the positives of it, like filling out clothing, looking bigger in real life when you're in clothing. Like when I'm dieted down, I look like a small child in like clothing, and I view all the positives, and I'm way stronger in the gym. General energy is really good, and so there's loads of positives that come with the push-up phase. But obviously, like anything, it comes with its negatives. You just got to learn to block them out as much as you can, which I'm sure you're doing with Steve.
Yes. Also, like what Steve says. He says like be a performance athlete in your off season, not like a physique athlete.
Yeah. That's very good. I like that.
Yeah. I also watched your video that we were talking about before, like where you talk about people just when they think about the pushing up phase or gaining like muscle mass and body fat, they just think about the bad things that come with like gaining fat. But I really like that video where you exactly say like, yeah, but if you gain a little bit of fat, then with the muscle mass or even more fat in clothes, you look much bigger. And also me personally, psychologically, I feel much better, dude. I don't need to think about food as much.
Yeah.
My dating life is better, obviously, because when I go to like the real 10% body fat, my libido is not on point, dude.
Bottom. Yeah, exactly. Same here.
Yeah, unfortunately, like I guess our selling points are a little bit, or selling range is a little bit above 12-13% body fat. So yeah, need to work with that.
Yeah.
So regarding nutrition, like what do you recommend regarding the macros, like protein, carbs, and fats? What are like the ranges you recommend for like an off-season phase, for example?
So I think I'm pretty much like, I don't really have any sort of shocking thought processes on this. I'm pretty simple in terms of the way that I set up people's diets. I tend to have a shift. The one thing that I definitely do with my clients is a shift in energy intake on versus off days. So rest day versus training day calories. The reason being is obviously our demand for glycogen on a training day is that much higher due to the fact that we are training. Of course, we still demand glycogen to recover, which I think is important. But for most of my people, I tend to like to see their activity be fairly low, maybe some slight introduction if their fitness warrants it, of rest day cardio. And in that case, we'll just obviously match the calories they need from that. But there's no way of getting around the fact that we're burning less calories on a non-training day than we are on a training day, especially with voluminous sessions. You're burning way less calories on a non-training day than you are with a training day. So I just see it as being beneficial when it comes to minimizing fat gain and maximizing tissue gain to drop calories slightly on a non-training day, especially if we're seeing consistent trends of the body weight just rising unnecessarily off an off day. I'd like to basically see them level, if not maybe go up a little bit, but level out on a non versus an off day in terms of their averages. So how would that look? Now, I'm definitely a believer of getting carbohydrates as high as possible on a training day, within the parameters of digestion. So we're not unnecessarily taking up carbohydrates to the point where someone is so full they can no longer eat their calories, which is very rare. But for the most part, I have some people that have got up very, very, very high, and it just becomes sort of an inconvenience, because obviously carbohydrates, even if you go for the the more calorically dense options, which you can only use so much of, there's only so much taurine you can eat in a day. There's only so many bagels you can eat in a day without just feeling awful. So at that point, when carbohydrates are pretty much maxed out, I'll obviously begin to raise dietary fats. I don't like protein crazy high. I'm around 1.25 to 1.5 grams per pound of body weight. I've experienced with much higher. I've had experience with much higher protein, which I haven't found huge differences in. I've maybe seen a little bit of a shift in some people's recovery. I've seen a shift in some people's body composition if they've responded really well to it. But for most people, especially if their calories are getting really, really high, having super high protein is just going to start to disrupt digestion even more. Send satiety the wrong way, so get them too full, so they can't, they're struggling to finish all of their calories because their protein's so high, protein being the most satiating macro. So for me, at around about 186 pounds, I'm on about anywhere between 225 and 250 protein, depending on the day. But on a training day, it's usually around 250 because I have a higher frequency of meals than I do on a non-training day. Then on a non-training day, given that carbohydrates are high, fats are at, basically at the baseline level. So for me, that's around about 60 grams a day. That just comes from basically, obviously, when carbohydrates are high, you're going to get a lot of trace fats. You're going to add up trace fats, and then adding actual fats into your diet becomes harder. That's why I'm also an advocate of the non-training day shift in calories and also macro setup, because when you have this training day with an abundance of carbohydrates, you're getting a lot of trace fats. Your ability to eat a lot of essential fatty acids in your foods, so things like nut butters, avocados, dark chocolate, all these things that do provide some degree of value, for general human health in terms of getting in a diverse diet. You don't get them in on a training day. So I like to open up the opportunity for eggs, salmon, avocado, etc. on an off day. So raising fats and lowering carbs slightly. I don't do anything like no carb off days or extreme, like you have to backload your calories on an off day or anything like that. Like the goal is not, obviously, in an off season phase to burn calories on your off day. The goal is not to enhance lipolysis or anything like that, because the goal isn't fat burning. The goal is recovery. So I still spread my macronutrients fairly evenly across an off day. I maybe place a little bit more of my carbohydrates towards the back end of the day. That's purely preference, because for me, if I was to start, like today's an off day, if I was to eat a ginormous amount of carbs this morning, mate, I'd just be feeling sleepy for the rest of the day, and I've got loads of work to do. And I tend to mentally, like psychologically, I find anecdotally, I function way better if I keep the first few meals of a non-training day just protein, maybe a little bit of fibrous carbs from either veggies or even some fruits, a small amount of fruit, and some fats. I just find that I feel better. I don't have that fogginess, and then I eat carbohydrate-based meals later in the day, and that actually makes me feel a little bit of a sleepy, which is good for pre-bed. And that's the way that I work. And obviously, not all of my clients are like that. Not all of my clients basically stand or sit at a laptop all day. So if someone's very much active on their off days, they're doing a job that requires them to move a lot, they're going to have more food. They're going to have more carbohydrates, because that day itself is way more glycogen demanding than my day. My day demands very little glycogen today, so I don't need a lot. I need enough. I don't need a lot. So I think the way that I view nutrition is it's very tailored to the individual. It's tailored to their energy expenditure on a given day. And I just make sure that they feel good off of it as well. So their feedback on how they feel given a setup is absolutely pivotal for me. So let's say, we have this theory that getting in a large carbohydrate, low fat meal post workout is advantageous for recovery, which we would like. But let's say having a meal for some people, maybe they're very lean, having a meal above 100 grams of carbs makes them feel like death the rest of that afternoon, because they have a huge surge in an insulin spike and then a massive drop off because they've got no fats with it. And they're like, whoa, I feel like shit, can't concentrate, can't do anything. And I've had some people like that. Usually, like I said, they're very lean, very insulin sensitive. So with that being said, I might ask them to either eat a smaller bolus of carbohydrates, but still low in fat, or I might even get them to add some fats into that meal. And then they seem to feel better as a result. And ultimately, maybe we're losing 5% of recovery, but we're gaining 100% of feeling better. And we know how much feeling better influences our mood, influences stress hormones. And if we look at the role of stress hormones in recovery, they play a much more pivotal role than just having 50 grams of carbs extra in your post-workout meal. So I think the biggest thing that I want people to realize when it comes to take homes on this is make sure your nutrition makes you feel pretty good throughout the days that you're meant to feel in a specific way. Play about with your nutrition. Don't think just because someone X does this that you need to do it. So if X has oats pre-workout, but every time you eat oats you feel like you just want to go to bed and fall asleep, don't have oats pre-workout. I've had even I mean, general advice would be to have carbohydrates leading up to your pre-workout, leading up to your session, right? And have pre-workouts and have carbohydrates in your pre-workout meal. But I've had some clients try and trial with having no carbohydrates up to their workout and just going straight into their intra-workout shake. And some people do like that. Some people respond well to it. Their performance is still good. Their output is still good. They're having some simple carbohydrates in the form of highly branched cyclic dextrin in their training, and they'll start sipping on that before the gym too. And they don't feel sometimes that mental, that fog that you get maybe when eating carbohydrates, especially when you're higher in body fat and you potentially start to feel a little bit sluggish after eating now and again, just because insulin sensitivity is maybe going the other way, it's dropping off. So there's about a million one ways to set up nutrition is what I'm trying to say. And I think people should feel less afraid about trying stuff, and also less afraid to realize that something that works now might not work when you're 5 pounds heavier, or might not work when you're 5 pounds lighter. Like if I was to do the approach that I do on a non-training day now, when I diet down, it might not work so well. It might make me feel even worse. Carbohydrates when I'm dieting actually sometimes make me feel better, and sometimes make me feel more focused. It's a weird paradigm of trying to figure out what's working for you at a specific point in time. And then when you're dieting, it's literally about, just being super duper routine with what you do. And this as well. Obviously, you've been lean before. The amount that you rely on routine and consistency when it comes to dieting phases is just huge. Like you miss a meal, or you haven't got your special ingredients for your specific volume foods, and you're like dying with hunger because you haven't got this massive bag of iceberg lettuce. It just comes down to just being religious with every single day being routine when you're dieting. You're gaining that matters much less. And I think the little things when you're gaining matters much less in general. So these little changes to pre, post, intra, etc. meals matters much less when you are gaining. And the final thing that I think people should try more is intra-workout nutrition. Obviously, if you're training twice a day, like for example Steve does, intra-workout nutrition and peri-workout nutrition is pivotal for recovery. But I think that having an intra-workout shake, even if you're doing one session a day and dosing the carbohydrates based on your volume for that session, is, I think, a really big game changer in recovery. Since I've added intra-workout nutrition, I have since I've had intra-workout nutrition since I was, I think, 18. I was started having intra-workout shakes. One of my friends at the gym was having like, Gatorade or something during a session. He was like, "This feels really good," and I was like, "Okay, I'll try it." So I just started having Gatorades, and it was good, And little did I know that that was actually a thing. So I think intra-workout nutrition, in terms of having like session fatigue, seems to be less. So by the halfway through the session where I'd usually get a drop off, I don't really get the drop off. The psychological effects of feeling tired and then drinking a drink that has calories in it usually is beneficial in diet phases. And people like shun all this psychological stuff, but the mind is huge. Like there's more and more research going into like the mind and how it works when it comes to weight training, and it's pretty significant the effect it can have. So psychologically, I think it's important. If your sessions are long, and you're driving to the gym, you have a long drive or whatever, we're potentially missing out on a large window without a MPS spike. So having something in there that's going to spike muscle protein synthesis, whether it's a whey isolate, an EAA, a Pepto Pro combination, I think that's beneficial as well in terms of preventing muscle protein breakdown. And I just think more people should give it a shot, because ultimately, even if you go for a very, very cheap intra-workout shake, which would be getting a big bag of highly branched cyclic dextrin, which isn't that much, like bulk powders always have 40% off deals. Just give it a shot and see what the difference is, Everyone that I've introduced it to has always commented that they do like it. They do find a benefit. So yeah, that's one of the things that I am a big advocate of, is intra-workout shakes.
That's interesting, because I never did something like that. I never had like an intra-workout shake, and now you're talking about this. I really need to try it out, dude.
I think you should. I think you should. Yeah.
What's like a basic thing you would recommend? Like you talked about Gatorade, like just to start with Gatorade, would this be enough, or would you also add like whey isolate to the mix or something like that?
Sure. So I think it does depend on your session length, in terms of what you'll want. But I mean, Gatorade, fine, it might be a good place to start. But if you really want to limit the gastric distress that you're going to have from the shake, which is obviously of pivotal importance, because we want maximum blood pooling to go intramuscular, so to the musculoskeletal system. We don't want to pull any sort of blood flow towards digestion. So the minimal effects on digestion we can have, the better. So we want something with a very low osmolarity, so the digestion and gastric emptying is fast. The lowest osmolarity carbohydrate is going to be highly branched cyclic dextrin. You obviously have things like Carbolin or Vitago, which again are similar, but they're made up of different products. Obviously, highly branched cyclic dextrin is dextrose.
How do you write that, to be honest? Because I'm not English native. Like I'm like, oh shit, dude, I need to write it down.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, highly branched cyclic dextrin is probably the best one out of the mix. Okay. I wouldn't bother with Carbolin or Vitago, to be honest. So you got that, and then there's a bunch of things you can add for benefit in an intra-workout shake. So the cheap things that you can add that I think weigh up benefit before you even go into something to spike muscle protein synthesis is something to help deliver the carbohydrates even more. So what can we look at for delivering carbohydrates? We know that taurine, which is very cheap, may have an impact on delivering carbohydrates or carbohydrate uptake. So I put taurine in there at 2 grams. This is such a cheap product that people don't put in intra shakes, which I think should be there. Electrolytes, and there's so many products that you can use for this. You could even just use salt, but personally, I like to get an electrolyte blend from just any company. There is a pretty decent one from Amazon, which is called 40,000 volts, that a lot of people use. And again, what this is basically just sodium, potassium, and this will again help the delivery of the carbohydrates you're having in the shake. And ultimately, you're going to be losing some degree of electrolytes whilst we train. So putting them and replenishing them back in is something that you'd probably want. It's electrolytes are put in, and even taurine sometimes is put in basic sports drinks. So adding this to a drink that's for a performance athlete is probably going to be of benefit.
Yeah.
So there's that. Those are 2 that I put in. I mean, some people put creatine in there, but I don't think that's going to have a benefit taking it specifically in the intra shake. You can take that anytime. I personally put it in my intra shake just because I remember to take it if I put it in there. And then finally, your protein options. So obviously you could have an essential amino acid, especially if your session is slightly shorter and the goal maybe isn't to fully spike muscle protein synthesis, because whilst you will get an MPS spike with an EAA, I think the maximal MPS spike that you could get is a combination of the EAA with a more whole protein like a Pepto Pro or a whey isolate. If you're going to go for a whey isolate, you definitely want an unflavored option, because putting flavored whey isolate, like imagine a vanilla whey isolate in an Intra shake, it's just creamy. It's just horrible. Like it will make your stomach like bloat like hell. So don't do that. Buy an unflavored whey isolate, or invest in a more expensive product, which is Pepto Pro, which is a casein hydrolysate. And that's basically one of the fastest digesting whole proteins you can possibly get. So it's a casein hydro, or hydrolyzed whey is hydrolyzed whey is what it might be called in some countries. People call it Pepto Pro, some people call it a hydrolyzed whey. And the thing is, with the fact that they're so rapidly digesting, you don't need as much of them to get the same MPS spike as you would from the whey isolate. So you can use less of the Pepto Pro and less of the EAA than you would for a whey isolate. So whey isolate, you might have to use more than the Pepto Pro. So when you're looking at cost relation, it might be beneficial to buy the Pepto Pro, because you can end up using less of it than you would for the whey isolate to get the same bang for your buck.
A question I have really quick, sorry for interrupting you. Would you still spike muscle protein synthesis even if you would have a shake after the gym and the meal before the gym?
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on the length between those two meals, realistically. Now, the beneficial aspects of an intra-workout shake as well, Charles, is that if you have the intra-workout shake, you don't need to worry as much about that post-workout MPS spike, because you've already had one. So if you have a journey that's taking you back to the gym in a longer fashion, and you don't want to have a shake post-workout, and you actually want to wait for your potential heart rate to get down a baseline for us to flip that switch on the autonomic nervous system and start to get more in a relaxed state, and therefore have a positive impact on digestion, then I think we can wait and not worry about having that immediate post-workout protein option, because you've already had that whey isolate, that Pepto Pro in the session. So that's another aspect that I actually like about intra-workout nutrition, is that I don't stress out about rushing home to get an MPS spike, because I know that over the course of my 2-hour training session, I've already had one. And my last one before that might have come 2 hours before in my pre-workout meal. And then my next one might come an hour after my session in my post-workout meal. So I know that I'm regulating MPS nice and evenly across the course of the day with that approach. So yeah.
Talking about MPS, it's a topic I'm diving deep into right now. And I'm just curious what your opinion is. Like most of the time we talk about having like a protein distribution that is like equal during the day, more or less, and you eat a meal like perhaps every 4 or 5 hours. And my question is, let's say you spike muscle protein synthesis to the max during your workout, like in intra workout, and then you have a shake like 1 hour after that. But like the 4-hour window wasn't there, like we talk about the muscle. What is it called? The muscle. What is the effect called? Like I know John Trommelin talks about that. The ability for your body to spike muscle protein synthesis is perhaps a little bit inhibited because you already spiked it 1 hour before that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. If they're too close together, basically.
Yeah. What's your opinion on that?
To be fair, I don't really have an opinion on that. I can't say that I've thought about that enough to develop a huge opinion on like having MPS spikes too close together. I'd say that what a lot of people don't do well is splitting their protein intake just standardly across the course of the day. I think a lot of people don't pay enough attention to that, and they've got misconstrued with the advice that is purely just to hit your protein target at the end of the day. And you see people have huge boluses of protein at the end of the day, trying to scrap their protein together. I've even seen people have no protein in some meals. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. And this is another argument for, especially when on high carbohydrate masking phases, to increase your protein slightly based on the fact that you're accruing a lot of trace protein through carbohydrates again. So we roll into a lot of issues with, you know, both protein and fats when we're going quite high carb. But yeah, in terms of the proximity of feedings, I think it would make sense to split them up at that 4-hour window. I think eating too frequently, especially from a digestion standpoint on high food, is probably not a good idea either. But whether or not it has a huge impact on the quality of the MPS spike and the potential implications on MPS as a whole, I'm not sure. That's my feedback on that one, matey. But good question. Good question.
Yeah, I'm a nerd, dude. I have too many questions, dude. It's not even good for my own training.
Yeah.
And another thing I was thinking about before that podcast is talking about protein recommendations. Like Menno Henselmans, for example, he says like 0.8 grams per pound is enough for most people. And you also talked about high carb massing phases. And I'm also in a high carb massing phase right now. And the thing that I'm asking myself is, it's probably also beneficial to spike your protein in that phase, because if you say we need to, or I guess you also recommend to eat around like 4 meals, like it's perhaps like an average, like regarding meal frequency. So to spike your muscle protein synthesis to the max in like 3 or 4 meals, just for that, you will need more than 0.8 grams per pound if you are like high carb massing.
Yeah. And those meals become more and more difficult to eat because they're huge. And I think that will lead to an issue of just, like poor digestion, and getting to the point where the volume in those meals is just too high, especially for people that are on a lot of food. I think you'll just roll into issues like the thing obviously again with on the training days with the and then the non-training days with the slightly lower carb and the higher fat approach, the volume of the meals is much less on the non-training days. So I actually find that especially with people on very, very high food intakes, having the relief of not consuming these high voluminous foods tends to do their stomach a bit of good, you know, and ultimately, like, we look at, obviously, like Steve's done a few podcasts on digestion and things like that, but at the end of the day, like, volume of food will impact your gut and will impact your, like, the amount of times that you're bloating and distending. Like, if you're constantly bloating and distending, what do you think that's doing for your midsection, your abdomen, and the way that that's going to look at cosmetically? You know, you see a lot of big bodybuilders that have just been piling in food. Their gut and their abdomen, their distension doesn't look the same anymore. You know, like, your gut is not meant to be distended all the time. And I think that approach to when it comes to like meal frequency favors a lower food volume and higher meal frequency as food goes up. So I think if you're at 4 meals when you're dieting, you should maybe look to go to 5 to 6 when you're in a peak massing phase. And obviously just making those foods very easy to eat options. So, you know, like post-workout meals being like cereal and whey isolate being one of the best options, because you know, after you've eaten, like, you could eat a lot of cereal and still feel fine. But then you see people that are trying to still eat their diet foods when they're post-workout, and they're eating like an egg white omelet with 600 to 1,000 grams of sweet potato, and they're like bloated to high heavens off a meal, and you know, they're wondering why they're inflamed, their water weight is high, and they're just generally like a very stressed out individual. It's because they're having like no good impact on their gut and their digestion. And when you're not digesting food well, despite, you know, whatever anyone will say, you just don't feel good. You just don't feel good when your digestion is not good. Your mood is down. You know, you just don't feel yourself.
It's interesting. So, sorry to interrupt you. I really want to ask you that. In the other podcast, I talk a lot about like anxiety and inflammation. So you also just mentioned, right? If you have high inflammation, you are basically also more stressed.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. You know, we look at periods of time where, you know, we're experiencing higher stresses, and what happens to our recovery? You know, it goes down. We're creating a stress, and if we're piling stress upon stress, we're looking at basically creating an environment where we can't recover anywhere near as good as when our stress levels are low. Because, you know, the inflammatory response of training is there. We have the inflammatory response of being, you know, stressed out, worried, and anxious, and we're not doing anything to control it. Our sleep is probably going poor. and that just becomes havoc for trying to accrue tissue,
Mhm.
or even trying to lose fat, of course, as well. One of the predominant
Yeah.
stops people from losing.
What I wanted to ask you is regarding the mechanism. Like you can also get, let's say you eat foods that like basically that disrupt your
Yeah,
gut health.
sure.
Then basically by doing that, you will get more inflamed, and by doing that, you will become even more stressed, right? It's also like a mechanism,
Yeah,
you
for
know?
sure.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just a down chain effect.
Hmm.
And this is why, when people think that it's weird or like cuckoo to say that certain foods like promote inflammation. That's like not really true in some senses, but it's like foods that don't agree with you and don't digest well, they are going to produce some more inflammation.
Uh,
And it's just these certain individual foods that it's for the individual. It's not a food
it's
group that produces inflammation as a whole. It's a food
yeah.
group that produces inflammation for you.
It's super insightful that you mentioned that, because in my other podcast I talk about my own history of like diets and everything, and
Sure.
I was on a vegan diet for 3 years.
Wow.
But this year I stopped being on the vegan diet because I want to gain more muscle mass and I want to optimize everything.
Uh-huh.
And one big reason why I stopped, and also a lot of people that have been vegan, they say the same. It's a lot of people are getting anxious and worried and paranoid if they are long-term vegan. And I guess it's because of all the anti-nutrients. Their gut is being stressed, they're super inflamed, and then all this shit happens.
That's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
And like I think a lot of vegans experience pretty hefty digestive discomfort, because I coach a vegan, and managing his digestion is a pretty big issue for us. The amount of gas and disruption that he has as a result of some of his food options is really difficult to manage. And I think that will affect things in the long run. I think you said it there.
Mm.
The longevity aspect of that diet is hard to achieve when you're looking at, especially higher caloric intakes, and massing on vegan diets just gets very
Dude.
difficult.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very interesting topic
Mm.
there for sure.
Dieting is super easy. I was able to be on like 1,700 calories easily,
Probably
but
easy.
massing is just a pain in the ass,
Yeah,
literally.
I'll bet for sure.
Yeah, but thanks for mentioning the information. Like it's super insightful. Like because you hear from a lot of people that are in this vegan community that they are a little bit dogmatic, and they're like, "Why should you become more anxious on a vegan diet? It's so weird. What are you talking about?" They kind of dismiss it. But what you said made a lot of sense, really.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What I realized myself is also my caffeine tolerance was super low. I was drinking one coffee and I felt like I was on crack or something. It was like super weird.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. So now I want to talk also about like the differences between, like, do you also coach Gen Pop people?
Not really. I mean, I do a few, but I have in the past, so I can definitely talk about it. But I don't really currently know.
Because most of my listeners, I guess, they're more like in the Gen Pop people range, I would say.
Okay.
And now we talked a lot about the nitty gritty stuff, the stuff you do and your clients do.
Yeah.
What of all of this would you still focus on for like Gen Pop clients?
So I think the things that people need to focus on for Gen Pop is obviously very much like taking what we've said, but trying to simplify it down to what you want to achieve. So if it's within fat loss, you need to understand the importance of being in that overall caloric deficit. You need to understand the importance of still having a high protein diet and situating those meals across the course of the day in even fashion to promote satiety, like we were talking about before. Satiety aspects of protein are very much there. When it comes to muscle gain, I think there's a lot of things that even in the complex scenario can be done for the general population without any disruption to their daily life and any sort of like issues or difficulties. So for example, putting in an intra-workout shake into someone's routine based on the fact that they're doing enough work to warrant it is an easy, it's a convenient, it's a very easy thing to do. It's not hard to put some powder in a shake, and I think that actually even in a lot of general population workout programs, it's still warranted. And I think actually like a lot of the time it's a good thing, because it means that their performance, they're probably going to see some benefits, they're probably going to see some recovery benefits. And again, it's another way for them to get in calories. It's another way for them to get in good nutrition that's allocating towards their daily totals and taking them closer to being on target. I think a lot of the things that I said within the start process and like the work ethic side of things, and understanding that it takes work to achieve a specific goal is absolutely key when it comes to general pop. Like, a lot of people don't understand when it comes to not like getting a coach isn't going to do the work for you. Getting your head down and getting to work and setting some goals out for yourself is absolutely key. And I think you don't have to have the goal of competing. You don't have to have the goal of a photo shoot. You have the goal of losing 15 pounds. You have the goal of looking good on your holiday. You have the goal of like being confident in the way you look and feel. You can have the goal like we talked about with the food options in terms of just feeling good. How many people, Charles, do you think feel like crap on a daily basis because they eat crap?
Yeah.
So many people, like so many people. And like, I see it all around me. It's like, people just grabbing crap for lunch, people grabbing rubbish for breakfast and making themselves feel and digest food awfully. And they're like, oh, well, I just have bad digestion. I know you don't. Your food selection is poor, and it's making you feel run down. It's making you feel tired. It's making you feel groggy. It's making your sleep quality poor. And the moment that people sort of wake up and think, fuck, actually, yeah, like shit, I'm causing some of these issues, and it's an easy fix. It's not difficult to start to shift your food options, and the food options that exist within a healthy diet, you'll start to form a really positive relationship with, because the moment you eat them, you start to feel better. Your energy better, your sleep's better, your skin's better, and all of these positive attributes that come with selecting, good and healthy foods. And then you'll just want to do more of it, and then you'll start telling other people about it, and people will be asking how you've done this and why you've done this. So yeah, a lot of what we said can be applied to both Gen Pop as well, but I think the complexity is, sometimes you definitely need to just sort of take it down a level when you're starting out. Get like I said at the start, get the advice of a potential coach. If you're Gen Pop and you don't really know how to move in the gym, please seek out a very good PT, because seeking out an online coach at that point is just not what you need. I mean, even the most in-depth exercise library won't teach you how to move well. You need someone there. You need someone critiquing you in person to make sure you don't get hurt, and to make sure that you just got the foundations of exercise execution nailed, so that then you can move forward to an online coach. You can work with them and they can actually do their job appropriately. Me trying to teach someone how to hip hinge through online coaching is just like an absolute nightmare. So you can do it. You can do it. It's just very frustrating and very hard. So
just what are like the basics you would recommend to like Gen Pop people? Do you have a meal frequency recommend? Like also like regarding the protein, is it still the same as we talked about before?
Yeah, sure. So I think 1 gram per pound of protein would be absolutely fine for Gen Pop. If you're hitting that, that's cool. I mean, mate, like take a normal person's diet and then look at how much protein they're having. Going up to 1 gram per pound is a huge increase. It's
the double, I would say. Yeah.
Like, what is all this food? Like, I remember when coaching General Pop, the first thing they said, they were like, I'm eating so much, I'm so full. And I'm like, you're losing fat, just keep eating what you're eating. Everything's going perfectly fine. You're just not used to eating 200 grams of Greek yogurt ever before in your life, because usually most people would just have a couple of spoons, so increasing protein, it's going to make you feel fuller throughout your diet, and ultimately, it's going to improve body composition. So doing that as a foundation is going to be key. Then when it comes to meal frequency, I mean, an absolute bare minimum of 3, but ideally when you're situating protein at 1 gram per pound, you're probably going to want to split them up across 4 meals at minimum, just but for ease and convenience. And that could actually look like, very simply, you're having your breakfast, lunch and dinner, but you just add in a protein shake or a protein bar. It's not hard. That's what I used to say to my Gen Pop clients. I was like, you're now having 3 meals. You're sitting down with, your husband in the morning, you're having breakfast, you have lunch at the office, and then, midway through your afternoon or midway through your morning, whichever you're most hungry at, you have a shake, you have a bar. Simple. and then in the evening you sit down and you have your evening meal. Perfect. That's cool. That's the job done. Or even some people at that point would then have their evening meal and then they'd situate a fifth feeding of protein, which would be like a sort of like 1 to 2 hours before bed, a little snack, like, you know, some yogurt, something like that, to top off their protein intake. So I think the biggest thing that you can take away from that is planning. I don't think enough people plan out their day. They just, especially when they're new to flexible dieting, that say jump up flexible diets and they're new to it, the first thing they do is they're like, oh, okay, I'll just track as I go. And when you track as you go, you fail all the time, because you're, at the end of the day, you're scrounging through the fridge to try and hit your numbers, and it ends up being a nightmare, or you select more options. So plan out your day in MyFitnessPal, create a week option, and then maybe on the weekend you can start to have some more flexibility and introduce some variety and prepare some more meals when you're away from work and things like that. You know, you can start to do those things, but trying to do that whilst you're trying to work, trying to, you know, do your normal job at the same time, it's going to be a nightmare for you. You're going to overthink it, and it's going to cause more than it's worth.
Yes. Also, sorry for interrupting you. I want to say something. Okay, yeah, because also an anecdote from my own life, like regarding planning. I realized that the more I plan, the better I am at like losing body fat and like cutting down. So what I did before my last photo shoot was like kind of almost crazy. So what I did is I had never like my food. I always bought food for the one day I was the day was, you know, I was never like buying food for the next day. So what I did in the morning, I was always working at like 3 p.m. So in the morning I woke up, and then I had to walk to the store. I had to take like 5,000 steps to walk to the store and to buy my first meal at the meals for the day. And then I had to basically walk back, or sometimes also took the bus. So I had to do like 6,000 to 8,000 steps before eating my first meal. So then I hit my steps. I was listening to a podcast, and I was eating my first meal of the day. And this was like when I did that, then the first thing in the morning, the day was good to go.
Habit routine.
Habit routine.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I guess people think they have so much willpower, but I would never bet on willpower, man. Like environment always beats willpower.
Yes.
Talking about the willpower at the end of this podcast, because I see we are already 1 hour in. Also, because most people, I guess, will get a lot of value from the topic of sleep. Because I realized today also my sleep was not the best this morning, and I wanted to study before that podcast, and I realized like I wasn't able to focus as good as I did yesterday because my sleep was not that good. So what are your recommendations for like good sleep quality? Because I know you have a lot of knowledge in this area for sure.
Sure. So I think the first people need to think about when it comes to sleep is just the fundamental, which is routine. So when we look at regulating your circadian rhythm, so your sleep and awake cycle, you need to get into a nice routine. And the issue is a lot of people have this balance of a weekday routine and a weekend routine. Their weekday routine, they get up normal time every single day. And why they probably start to feel slightly better towards the end of the week because they've started to regulate that pattern again. The 6 a.m. wake up becomes slightly easier towards the end of the week because it's regular, it's normal, it's ingrained. And then the weekend comes, they start to wake up at 10 a.m., 11 a.m., and they just break that pattern. They break the routine. This is key. So what I say to my clients is that we need to set a bedtime as best as possible. We need to set a wake time, and you need to stick to that. Recently, funnily enough, my sleep has gotten a little worse in terms of my ability to wake, and I know the exact reason. The clocks have changed, and when the clocks change, even with you know they start to shift and you start to become normalized. But with the daylight hours being longer, like my pattern has just been shifted, and it makes a huge difference. And I've been wondering why I felt slightly different over the last few days, and then it suddenly clicked. I was like, that's why. And when you're so routined, you can start to nab onto these little tiny things that have made a difference. Most people, it makes no difference at all. They just feel the same. So that's routine. So within that routine, so notice haven't mentioned any supplements yet. No supplements, just routine. So within that routine of a bedtime and a wake time, we need to look at what you're doing before bed. And a lot of people are doing a lot of the wrong things before bed. They're doing things that can essentially get adrenaline up, get heart rate up. They're like listening to like loud music, or they're watching something on TV, which is, you know, basically distracting them from the ability to relax. Like, obviously watching something on TV is key, but I think watching something that is away from your work, so for people in the fitness industry, watching something that's nothing to do with the fitness industry, I think is actually a pretty good thing, because you've spent all your day consuming fitness relative content. I think switching off and doing something outside of that, like watching Netflix or watching something different, is going to be key to help you switch off and relax. So there's that, you know, making sure you're calm, making sure you relax. Because yeah, a lot of people do like stimulating tasks pre-bed and like running around trying to get stuff ready and, you know, prepare stuff for the next day, and they never have that half an hour to an hour to relax. So allowing yourself some of your own time to relax is also key. The bedroom environment itself is pretty important, so like blackout blinds, making sure the room is dark. The way in which you get off to sleep is usually kind of quite correlative to core temperature as well, and it's been shown that actually being a little bit colder is going to be beneficial to get to bed a little bit easier. So having a window open and letting some cool air in is probably a good idea. So having the room slightly cooler and slightly warmer, I think, is good. Then when it comes to the room itself, making it just a relaxed environment, whether that's within just the blue light, just the blackout blinds or an eye mask, or it could be something like a diffuser with lavender or something like that, or lavender spray on the bed. Again, lavender has some research into it in its calming effects. So all of these tools that you can start to put together and use as strategies to get a better night's sleep are going to start to get you into that routine. That sleep quality will improve, your overall length of sleep will improve, and that's going to make a huge difference as a first port of call.
Yes.
So I think that's what you need to do first. Do all of those things, and then if sleep doesn't improve, you can start to look towards other things that you could be doing. Another very basic one actually is just your food. So I think it's sensible to have your last meal ideally an hour and above away from sleep, because we don't want to promote digestive processes when we're trying to be in a sleep state, because ultimately that's going to disrupt your ability to fully relax, because digestive processes are still going on. So I would say that eating your last meal a couple of hours pre-bed would be a good idea. An hour if gastric emptying is faster, so maybe you're leaner or the meal is only very small. Having that last meal a little bit closer to bed shouldn't be a problem. So there's that. That's the basic thing. Similar with water. A lot of people drink too much water pre-bed, and they're up in the middle of the night going to the toilet. That's going to cause issues, because that's going to interrupt sleep patterns. Ideally, we want to get to the point where we're awake none of the night and you sleep straight through. And the biggest change that I've made in terms of improving that is water intake. Just making sure that I push my water intake back. So like 2 hours pre-bed will be the last time that I drink water. And then that's it. That's my fluid done. And then since doing that, I don't wake up at all in the night to go to the toilet whatsoever. My sleep is unbroken in terms of waking up to go to the toilet, and pretty much it's unbroken in general. So that's that. And then something like a sleep tea is usually good, like valerian root and things like that, and a sleep tea. Usually it's nice. Again, it's calming. So having that, again, ideally an hour or so away from bed. Again, it's a little bit of liquid, but it's not much.
Yeah.
So that's fine. And then we can move on to like supplementation. So if all of these things are not giving you the greatest sleep and you want to improve it even further, you can look at supplementation. So from a hormonal point of view, I don't really like GABA or melatonin. I think we can produce enough of these without the use of them exogenously. And I think that actually using melatonin, like whilst it might have an impact, I think actually some people wake up feeling more groggy with an increased melatonin dose pre-bed. And I also think that you can produce enough melatonin if we're getting into a good routine of potentially wearing blue light blocking glasses, which we know will help the secretion of melatonin, and increasing your morning daylight exposure, which we know will help the natural secretion of melatonin when it comes to the pre-bed window as well. So those two things, blue light blockers, morning sunlight exposure, is going to help with regards to melatonin and not having to take it exogenously. Then supplements I think do help are calming supplements. So we could look into minerals, so magnesium glycinate, zinc piconate. They're two really good ones. We could look into adaptogens. We could look into ashwagandha as a calming supplement. Again, we're looking to get you into this state of maximum calm. So notice how all of these things are like to just get you calm. And if you're already calm enough and your body's relaxed enough without these, you don't need to go and buy these. But yeah, magnesium glycinate, zinc piconate, those two will do a great job. L-theanine as well is another one that you could potentially use. That's a calming amino acid. Ashwagandha, which is an adaptogen, it's a herb. Like I've said, I'd recommend getting the KSM 66 blend strain, because that's going to be the most pivotal in terms of the impact it's going to have. The others you can use, like if it's ashwagandha root, you'd have to take much higher dosages to get the same effects. And that's pretty much all I will really take, to be honest. I don't really like to just go too overboard with that. At the moment, I only take magnesium glycinate. I actually had this question in my podcast about sleep subs as well. So at the moment, I only take magnesium glycinate, and I wear my eye mask and I wear my blue light blockers, and the rest of it has just been ingrained routine, and that's why I think my sleep is so good. So when you're prepping, maybe you need to rely on more. I was actually taking melatonin when I was prepping, but I don't think it made a difference. I actually think it made me feel worse. But I thought maybe psychologically it was having was like taking a drop of melatonin. I was like, yeah, sleep. It doesn't really work that way, So yeah, I hope that helps some people with sleep.
Yeah, good points. I also like to keep it simple. I just wear my blue light blocking glasses like 2 or 3 hours prior sleep.
Okay.
And then if I feel like a little bit stressed, I have it even here. Always here some L-theanine on my desk. I just put it into some little bit of tea, as you said, not too much fluid. And then I'm good to go. I also have like a sleeping mask. And I want to buy I don't know how this light is called. Like Steve talked about that, SAD light or something like that.
Oh yes, SAD light. Yeah. Is that for seasonal disorders or something like that?
I guess, yeah. If you wake up like pretty late during the day and you don't experience a lot of sunlight during the day, you can just have one of these SAD lights, and they will give you like some, I don't know what the exact light frequency is, but it kind of mimics that it's the sunlight.
Right. That is interesting.
Yes, super interesting.
That's interesting, because obviously, like in the UK, like the amount of time we get actual like lovely sunny days is very fucking minimal. So having one of those sounds cool. So yeah, I'll look into that too. That sounds
I mean, it just snowed this morning, so we have snow in front of the house. So yeah, I mean, I need also one of these lights. Awesome. So cool. AJ, I just realized you're over 1 hour in. Thank you so much for taking the time, dude. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure, dude. I hope this helps some people and people enjoy it. And yeah, I'm happy to come back on anytime you want me, mate. So yeah, appreciate it.
Sure. Well, where can people contact you the best?
Cool. So Instagram is where I'm most active. AJ at AJ Morris _. I have the membership site, which I'm putting quite a lot of effort into at the moment with regards to video content and our forums.
Over 200 videos, right? I saw.
Yeah, so yeah, I've got over 200 videos on that site now. It's just a bunch of content. So if you're a new member, there's just so much to catch up on.
Yeah.
And all throughout my prep, there's videos and things like that. But now the frequency is 1 workout per week and 1 informative video per week. And I'm getting more exciting stuff coming with regards to having more athletes being filmed professionally around the UK, and their natural bodybuilding journeys being documented on the site through the logs and the forums. The realization that I've had over the last year is that I've learned so much through forums that I think more people need to be logging, because Forums people thought were dead, and they're not. They're not dead. Forums are great. I catch up on the Train by JP forum every single day without fail. And you know, obviously the drug stuff I just avoid. I'm just like, yeah, I don't really need to know about that. But it's interesting because a lot of to be fair, some of the implications that synthetic hormones have on the body can be kind of correlative to what our effects would be in terms of controlling our own endogenous hormones.
Yes.
So there's some things you can learn, you know, from following these logs. But mainly I follow that for the training and for what the changes they're making and why they're making them. And it also just gives me so much information. So I've got loads of people logging on the site. I've got 2 up and coming that are going to be like IFBB Pro bikini athletes on there logging for the female side of things. So they're amateurs at the moment, but you'll follow them to probably achieving their pro cards. I've got obviously people logging their current bodybuilding preps in terms of dieting down. I've got people logging their off seasons. I've got some of my clients logging on there. I've got amateur athletes logging on there all over the world. Like it's becoming a little bit of a nice hub on there on the forums, and people are really doing a good job at updating them daily. So I'm just going to keep growing that as much as I can. So that's at madebyMorriscoaching.com. And then I just uploaded, actually today, Thursday, is my podcast day. Funnily enough, last week I had one of mine, and then Jan Friss podcast, and now I have
Jan Frisse. Oh, nice.
And then yours, and the week before that I had mine, and then JPS. So Thursday is like my brain explodes by the end of the day.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, guys. If you're listening to that, definitely check out the members side. I also checked it out before, and I will also get a membership because I believe I can really feel how much value you put into your work, and I know like I will get like 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times the value back. So
I mean, you know, even if it's like, you know, like for someone like you or someone that follows me and likes what I do, if you want to get inside my head and like know how I work, just follow my log, and then you'll see exactly what I'm doing, like with my training, exactly what I'm doing with my like daily day-to-day processes and the way I decide to do things. If you follow a log, you get to see people's thought processes in action, which I think is why the logs are so good. So yeah, mate, yeah, I'd be welcoming of you being a member. That'd be awesome.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So guys, check the links in the comments below, also the timestamps and everything. So thanks a lot, AJ, for being here. Really appreciate it. Also check out his YouTube channel, which is also pretty insightful. And yeah, thank you so much for being here, AJ. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Thanks for the like, thanks for the subscription, and I will see you in the next one.
Cheers, guys.